Welcome you back to video number 5 in the series of courses on sustainable urban governance. Course being offered on YouTube and being presented live in New Orleans on Monday nights at the architectural firm of FUTUREPROOf. It's on 822.5 Baronne Street. This is number 5, and once again, I'm talking about the importance of the three aspects of sustainable urban governance. You got the economy, you got society, and you've got the environment. And where they all intersect is the focus that I'm interested in, because this is what's called the triple bottom line. The idea that we go beyond what the economics requires and looks at what society needs and what the environment requires. And again, let me describe where we are in the course material right now. Earlier in the videos, we were talking about public capital, and in the last video, number 4, and in this one here, we're talking about sustainable design, which is the intersection between society and the environment. And in a future video, we're going to be talking about the last one, which is the economy and the environment, talking about public wealth. But for now, let's continue the discussion of sustainability planning and try to finish that up today. The sustainability planning and design, there's 2 authors by the name of Beatley and Manning. I know Beatley is from the University of Virginia, and he provides an analysis of the evolution of what's called sustainable places as an alternate description of ecological infrastructure. And it's important to understand that when Beatley and Manning talk about sustainable places, they're not talking about being anti-development, but they're trying to describe a concept that involves the community in its entirety, from the natural environment to the very high reliability urban areas. But Beatley and Manning's concept questions traditional growth patterns. When you talk about Veterans Boulevard out in Metairie in Jefferson Parish, this is what's called the typical sprawl pattern. You can go up to Covington, that's almost like a continuation of Veterans Boulevard on the North Shore. Shouldn't be confused with new urbanism, which is not particularly urban or regional in Beatley and Manning's opinion. It shifts the environmental thinking to viewing cities as part of the answer, restorative and regenerative, equitable and just urban development in simultaneity with future generations. The idea is that you're thinking about future generations when you're doing something in the current day. It's something that's kind of rare nowadays. Land is cherished and consumed sparingly. This is the idea about future generation focus. Then cities are compact, cities are vibrant, and cities are green. Green in terms of a nice canopy of trees, the type of vegetation that would withstand high winds and flooding if you're in New Orleans. After months of following controversies in Louisiana over the proposed increased use of groundwater for merchant power plants, this is like in the 1980, the 2000 time period, about the time when I was doing my dissertation research on the aquifers of Baton Rouge. There was a potential legislation that may result from the governor's task force on groundwater. It was clear to me when all this was going on that the idea of crisis was poorly understood. Some people were talking about in terms of there's a crisis in groundwater management. Other people said, no, there's not a crisis. So what I thought was that we need to clarify or maybe have some kind of heuristic device to identify what crisis is all about. So rather than a point in time, I think crisis should be thought of as a process toward a worsening condition, such as I'm illustrating here in the hope crisis continuum. You can see the red line going up and then making a B line to the southeast there, but decreasing hope decreases at a steady rate. The idea is that at some point you reach a period of non-sustainability, like I'm showing here on slide 22. The hope crisis continuum then is a description of a condition that you might be in, where you'd be in good shape if you're on the left side near the hope, and you're in worse condition than on the right. I'll get into that hope crisis continuum idea more in the future, in a future presentation. But the whole idea is that if you can define the state that you're in, a high amount of hope, that means that you've acknowledged when something is wrong that you need to correct. And you don't wait till it gets worse to the point of non-sustainability and then spend all that money and all that social capital bringing it back to a hopeful situation. That's essentially what that whole concept is. And when you get two people who disagree on whether something's a crisis or not a crisis, you just say, okay, we disagree, but let's describe where we are within our own hope crisis continuum, and then revisit that discussion and ask ourselves, are we worse off today than we were 3 months ago? And then are we getting closer to that non-sustainability region? Another two authors that are very important in this whole concept of sustainability planning within this course of sustainable urban governance is two gentlemen by the name of Rowe and Van Eaton. They illustrate a comprehensive threshold-based resource management system that's based on 4 types of ecosystems that implicitly incorporates concepts developed above that I'm talking about, that Beatley and Manning had, and they're not anti-development either. This is a real-time scheme that it's not evolutionary, but it encompasses the most densely populated urban core as well as the least impacted natural environment. And what you see on the bottom of the screen is their system answers the question of how to get from here, and here meaning the number 1, which is blue, is kind of like a lake or a stream, and then you've got these mismatch of uses to something that's a little bit more reasonable, or something that's more well managed, where you gradually go from 1 to 2 to 3 and the 4. 4 being the urban center, is that you have a gradation of uses so that things are accommodated more. I think we'll go into a few more concepts and then we'll kind of break. But before we break, I wanted to talk about another author. There's a textbook in infrastructure systems where they talk infrastructure management systems, or IMS. And if you take that and Rowe and Van Eaton's distinguishing characteristics of a management regime in threshold-based resource management, you understand where Rowe and Van Eaton is coming up with bandwidth management. And we'll get into this a little bit more in a future video, but where you see a material from an earlier presentation about how an infrastructure system works, how you monitor it, and you look at the performance measures. If you look at adaptive management systems, where it's a little bit toward the natural way of, it could be a forest or pasture, into a conflict management, that's where you have suburban areas right on the edge of the natural. You might recall the children's movie Over the Hedge. That would be conflict management, where you have animals and people living next to each other. And then the high reliability management is the urban areas where it's concrete, maybe some urban parks, but high reliability meaning that you don't want street lights to fall onto cars. You want to have things that are certain, that are reliable, people aren't going to be hurt or killed, that you have security systems and chemical protection systems. But if you look at all those together, you're talking about a bandwidth, because you're concerned about the pristine environment all the way to the urban, all in one concept, is that you've got it all managed. I think what I'm going to do is leave that concept right now and pick that up in the video number 6.